The Labor Party appears to have been blindsided by news of a serious fraud office investigation into donations it received in 2017. Shortly before 5, the SFO announced it had launched an inquiry, but the details are few and far between. Our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch, joins us now. Craig, what do we know from the party itself?
Good evening, Lisa. Yes, well, Labor looks to be in the dark as much as the rest of us. It put out a statement in the past half hour, which doesn't say very much. It says, "We have not been advised of the specifics of the inquiry. However, the Labor Party will fully cooperate." So no details about what donations are in question here, no details about where or who the money might have come from, what they relate to. There is one interesting point in their statement, basically the only substantive point that Labor makes in its brief statement. It points out that earlier this year, it admitted that it had received donations from two of the men who are already under investigation by the SFO, or who were already under investigation by the SFO because of their donations to the National Party. Those two men have been charged, including Jamie Lee Ross and another businessman. They have all pleaded not guilty, and that issue is before the courts now. So we do not know whether or not the SFO's inquiry relates to those men, relates to donations from those men. But Labor seems to think that it may do, or at the very least it wants to suggest that it may do. Otherwise, why else make that link?
And what do we know of those particular donations, what form they took and what value they had?
Yes, so one of the donations was quite small, $2,000 or so roughly, and it seems to have been made in a typical way, and so it's unlikely to be involved here. It was also in 2018. The SFO talks about donations in 2017. The other donation is more interesting. Labor admitted that it had received $10,000 from a man, Heng Jia-jing, who purchased a piece of art at a silent auction in March 2017. Now, the total proceeds of that entire event, $60,000, were transferred to the Labor Party by that same man. Now, Labor says all donations, and it said this earlier this year, after inquiries from media, including RNZ, Labor says all those donations were appropriately filed in accordance with the rules, all were declared, all the authenticity of each of the individual donors at that event were checked at the time by the party. Now, we do not know, as I said, whether or not this is what the SFO is looking into. You wouldn't want to speculate too much, but the use of art auctions, silent auctions, in this way to raise money has raised questions before. Listeners may have heard Andrew Geddes earlier on the program, After 5, an electoral law expert. He is concerned about that practice being used to potentially hide the identity of donors. He wants that tightened up. So potentially that is something that the SFO may be considering.
We're kind of at the point, really, where the list of parties not being investigated by the SFO, parties in Parliament, is now shorter than those that are being investigated. What's going on?
It's precisely right. We're now talking about 3 political parties which are in Parliament being associated with SFO investigations, and just 2, the Greens and ACT, not. So National was involved in an investigation, and now Labour and New Zealand First involved in ongoing investigations. Is there a wider problem here? That's probably a question for somebody else, an electoral law expert perhaps. Andrew Geddes certainly seems to think that there is a problem here. It's certainly not typical or anything even close to usual for this to be the case, for 3 political parties to be involved or associated in any way with SFO investigations relating to donations. And that does suggest potentially that there could be a bigger problem here, maybe with the law, maybe with people's interpretation of the law, maybe with the spirit of the law, which is a phrase that has been thrown about before, potentially a problem. In fact, for Labor, Jacinda Ardern has previously made comments about National and some donations that National received completely separate, but she said at the time that they were not in the spirit of the law. Now, that means here, Labor can't have just followed the letter of the law and say, we were strictly within the bounds. They actually have to follow the spirit too if they are to live up to the same standards that they've been holding National to. So all in all, I think it's pretty obvious Labor will not be happy at all about this. This is just an investigation. It doesn't indicate guilt. The SFO actually makes that point in its statement. But any headline with the words SFO and investigation is not a headline that any political party wants associated with it. Just ask New Zealand First. Just ask the National Party.
Yeah, well, a bunch of listeners have got in touch, and some of them are aggrieved about the fact that the SFO is making this announcement now and even making the announcement publicly. What does the SFO say about that? Because it does in part address that, doesn't it?
It does, and that is one of the first comments that the SFO director makes in the statement that she puts out. She says that in keeping with the habits or the tradition that it has kept up to this point, in which it made comments at the time about the New Zealand First Foundation, its inquiry into that. It made comments at the time about its investigation into donations to the National Party, which were brought to the public's attention by Jamie Lee Ross. It made those public announcements, and it's saying in the exact same way, it is behaving the same way and making clear or public this investigation into the Labour Party. Now, these other investigations have come to or will come to more of a resolution. You know, I guess the inquiry relating to National resulted in charges being laid against Jamie Lee Ross and 3 other businessmen. That trial scheduled to go ahead in September next year, 2021. Then the New Zealand First Foundation, the inquiry is still going on into that now, but we have been told by the SFO that they potentially, or that it expects to make an announcement of some sort before the election, but it is highly unlikely at this late stage that we're going to see any resolution for this inquiry into the Labour Party. It's not ideal for Labour. It's not ideal for voters who would have hoped to have all the information that they need before them to make up their mind in the ballot box in September. But this is likely to remain an unanswered question.
Thanks, Craig. Good to talk to you. That is our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.